Today we are going to do something that we haven't done since like October 21, I believe. Well, anyway, it has been a very long time, but today we are going to have a look at a case that is not going to cripple you financially for the next decade. Meet the Xilent Breeze, or XG131, or X712.RGB, or Xilent Breeze Performance A+ X7. Every time we feature a Xilence product, there is like a 20-second segment just for the name. But for mental health reasons, we will just stick to Breeze. This is the Xilence Breeze. If you look it up on Google, you will find the Breeze. If you look it up on Amazon.de, you will find the Breeze. If you look it up on Amazon.com, you will find cat toilet refill stuff and the Breeze. But without any buying option, cause it's not available in the US. Maybe one day, but as of now, I didn't find any retailer, but maybe you know better. I don't know any retailers apart from Newegg. It's not my continent. Coming back to the Breeze. This is a budget case. The type of I have 500, 750, $1,000 and I'm not going to spend a quarter of that on a case just to have the worst possible hardware inside the most shining armor. This is for the budget-focused people who didn't drink bleach as kids. But what budget also means is that we will not have the top-of-the-line, extravagant, whatever features that a €200 case is supposed to offer. That being said, the Breeze still has a lot to offer for the price point, so let's go over everything. Just keep in mind that we are still talking about a €60 case, so cutting corners is kind of allowed. Compatibility-wise, the Xilence didn't seem to have cut many corners for the Breeze. The case itself is 470mm high, 370mm deep and 220mm thick, though that's not really true. Whoever measured the depth stop measuring where the front panel begins, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And to make matters worse, there is a segment on the website stating that with the front panel it's 410mm long, which is still not true. It's not even reaching the border of the plastic structure around the panel. After a personal mental breakdown, we came to the conclusion that 430mm is actually the number that they misspelled twice. Oh, and the case is 495mm high, not 470. Who the hell does these measurements? But we can fix that. Yeah, 470 and here it's 430. And yeah, nobody cares about that one. Oh, okay, no, that's better. At least the thickness was correct. That's one of three. Ignoring the triple faux pas, the compatibility of the Breeze is actually surprisingly good considering the price. For the motherboard, it's the usual stuff. ATX, Micro ATX and Mini ITX. Nothing shocking for a case in this form factor. But it's actually the CPU cooler and GPU length support that kinda shook me. For the CPU, we can actually go with up to 165mm high cooler, by my measurement. And that's surprisingly high for A, the size, and B, the price point. For the rest of the video, I will heavily compare the Breeze to the Montech X3. Not only because they look kind of very similar, but because they both focus on the exact same audience. Budget friendly and ready from the get-go by squishing in enough fans for free. Now on the X3, the CPU support is limited to 160mm. That's 5mm less than the Breeze. And those 5mm could potentially make or break, but I think I kind of know where the 165mm are coming from. The Be Quiet Dock Rock Pro 4 needs 163mm, which conveniently fits into the 165 that the Breeze offers, and Xilence being a daughter company of the same company that is above Be Quiet, I kind of think I know where the 165 was coming from and why it was pretty important. Coming to the GPU, here we are looking at up to 350mm, considering that you don't want to install a radiator in the front. And 350 is about 45mm more than the X3, so yeah, compatibility wise, the Breeze is basically just an upscaled version of the X3. The side of the case is covered in a tempered glass side panel, which can be removed by unscrewing the two screws in the back and sliding it out. And at this point, I also need to say something. This glass that I always need to remove because it's basically impossible to make nice looking B-rolls with a piece of glass on it. This glass is really, and I mean really thick. Measuring it with obviously the wrong measuring tool showed that it is about 5 millimeters thick, and that's quite a lot more than what the usual budget case comes in. But it's not only that. I'm unsure if it's because they can somehow reutilize or even use the exact same tooling as required. I just don't know how these things work. But when first working with the case, it immediately became apparent that the material build quality, like the wiggleness of the material, the thickness of each material, the feed, it is just not where I expected it to be from a company that produces exclusively like budget-friendly stuff. I strongly suspect that it has to do something with Be Quiet being existent and like adjacent, and I just don't know how these things work in the background, but let's just say I'm happy that the overall build quality of the Breeze is miles ahead of something like, for example, the X3 mesh. Coming back to support, the PSU is located in its own compartment in the back of the case and seeable through that useless window that way too many manufacturers install nowadays. In the bottom of the case we'll find the usual removable dust filter, and by spec the PSU can be up to 220mm long, but at that point it will be completely squished against the hard drive cage that sits behind it. But that can be fixed. By removing the two screws in the bottom of the case we can unhook that damn thing and throw it in the trash where it belongs. Though this will also cost you the support of two 3.5 or two 2.5 inch drives. So for the folks that are willing to put up with the bigger drives, don't come with a oversized PSU or you will have a really hard time. Behind the motherboard plate we will also find two additional SSD brackets, so even with oversized power supplies you can still go with regular 2.5 inch drive. The motherboard plate itself features a bunch of holes all around the place which allow you to neatly route your cables where they belong. And one of them is a location I haven't seen often in these types of cases, and it's incredibly useful to get a very clean GPU cable going. On the top side of the case we will find another kinda surprisingly qualitative aspect, the I/O. Although two USB 3.0 and the usual mic in and out followed by a power and reset button are nothing like out of the ordinary, we will also find a little RGB button which reveals that there is actually a ARGB controller hidden behind it, which allows us to use the pre-installed ARGB fans and shine them with whatever color or modes that Xilence pre-programmed into this thing. But the quality aspect that I'm actually referring to are the buttons themselves. They are so freaking clicky. Even the minuscule RGB button, I can press it. My sausage fingers can actually make them click, and they feel good, really good. They feel absolutely nothing what the average budget case we had before felt like. But as we already briefly mentioned it, let's go to the actual reason why I like to compare the Breeze to the Montech X3. The pre-installed fans. The front of the Breeze supports up to 3 120s or 3 140mm fans, or maybe even two 200mm fans, though I cannot double check that because I don't have any. The top can house up to two 120s or two 140s, and the back is back to the usual 120mm support. Now, the front of the case comes with three 120mm ARGB Xilence fans pre-installed, while the back has a regular black fan without a real name pre-installed. Okay, so this is kind of the same setup that an X3 mesh comes in. You can get the case and completely ignore any fans and you will still be fine. This works fine out of the box. But there are substantial differences between both cases. First off, the Montech X3 comes with 6 ARGB fans. The Breeze only with 3 and then plus 1, the black one in the back. Objectively, which basically means me sitting 50 centimeters away from the case, I would say the Xilence fans are a bit quieter. Though I am measuring like 4 versus 6 fans, so take that with a grain of salt. But keep in mind that the noise level is barely noticeable at full blast, because yes, they are spinning at full blast right now. So it is still in the realm of usable if you keep those original fans. Now, unfortunately, I was really excited because I knew that there were going to be original Xilence fans in here. So I assumed a bunch of stuff. However, they blew it. They were so close to perfection, and they had the opportunity to whoop Montech's ass but they blew it. Do you remember the shit show that was the Molex centipede that Montech used to daisy chain all of their fans and make them spin at 100% all the time? Well, the Breeze is basically an updated version of that. Although there is an ARGB header present inside the case that allows you to pass through the ARGB controller and then just let your ARGB software take care of everything, those fans do not have a PWM connector. No, what they have is whatever the hell this is. And this thing is connecting all of the fans together, and then that is being translated into a SATA power port. So yeah, instead of a Molex chain keeping the fans at full blast, we are doing it by SATA this time. Oh, except the black fan. This one is voltage controlled. Great. What bugs me the most is that they had it. If you take a closer look at the SATA to spawn of the devil adapter, there are 3 lines going in, a 12 volt, a ground and a signal. And you see that the 4th one is basically missing. This is exactly what would happen if you connect a PWM 4-pin cable to a 3-pin voltage controlled header. You've got juice, you've got ground, and you've got whatever signal, but control is missing. So what happens is that the fan is just spinning at 100% all the time. And this wiring looks exactly like that. And this bothers me so much because I'm like 99% sure that whatever the hell this port is, it is just a regular PWM connection hidden inside some piece of trash. I won't verify that. I will not cut off these wires and resolder them into a PWM port. I would rather watch paint dry, but this needs to go away. And this needs to come. Why the hell did they do this? They were though so close. They were so freaking close. So close. This actually looks like it took extra effort. They have enough PWM fans. Why not go for those? Anyway, the conclusion of the fan situation will be the same as inside the Montech X3. This is bullshit. This is an upgrade. But just a PWM connection with a 3-to-1 splitter would be perfect. That would have made the case so much better. But considering the case falls into the absolute budget category, like the all-in-one type of thing, this is okay for the use case, and the amount of fans is also very good and it will get you going from the start. Before we end this, let's go to radiators. The top of the case supports a 240 or a up to 280 rad, and the back has a regular 120, and the front can go 360 or 280. Though this will also push back the GPU support, so do keep that in mind. As the last mini point, we have 7 breakout PCIe slots and some ventilation on top of the PSU shroud, which might even be a little bit useful, as the opening in the bottom is rather big for the type of power supplies that you would usually use inside a build like this. So you can also mount 2 additional 120mm fans on top of that PSU shroud and expect them to have some sort of an impact, but just, you know, don't expect extreme performance. They are just basically taking a bit from the front and a bit from the back, and they are more like refocusing the air into the GPU. It will help, but it will, you know, not do a lot. So, opinion time. I've done a few builds inside the Breeze. This is the last one, which will also come out as a separate video. And generally speaking, for like a budget case, the builds process was quite enjoyable, to be honest, and it was very, very quick. There might be not, you know, many extra features or quite frankly anything out of the ordinary, but the overall hardware support is surprisingly good, and the build quality doesn't really match what a budget case usually looks like. This like feels like the material quality king of budget case. The cable management options are what you would expect. Enough space to cram the cables in, some zip tie slots here and there, but the aspect which I think is most important, especially for people who are new to the game or have a tight budget and cannot afford like an extreme CPU cooler, the cooling inside the Breeze is very, very good for this type of budget case. Nowadays, the market is flooded with budget cases that think slapping a piece of glass against a fan is a good idea, but it's not. It's choking. And the 5600X that I installed in here is like barely 2 years old. It can't give consent, so no choking. The X3 and Breeze are budget cases that actually break that stupid pattern and use a mesh-like structure in the front with a magnetic dust filter in the top, and that's the right approach. And we will talk more about that in the building video, but Just so you know, things like the X3 Mesh and the Breeze are the type of case that you should aim for if you are on a tight budget. As far as I'm concerned, if I would be building a PC for myself, which would be like, let's say, underneath 1500 euros, this is the type of case that I would be going for. The front airflow will let more than enough air get into the case, and the top and the back are also more than enough to get the heat out. Sure, there are better cases out there, let's say a Fantex P500A, but the price difference from a P500A to a Breeze is what would allow me to jump from a 2500 to a 2600K, or from a 3060 Ti to a 3070. And until I don't have hardware capable enough to produce the kind of heat that would push the Breeze to its limits, I just don't see a real point spending any of my already tight budget on extra stuff that I just frankly don't need or don't take any advantage from, aside from, looking good. So for anybody who's looking for a case with a really tight budget, like let's say 1500 or maybe $1,000 and below, this is exactly what you need. This will set you back 60 euros. It will get you going from the start, and keeping in mind that case fans is like the #1 thing that people forget that they need when start building, it can't really get much better than that, especially because an X3 is going for around $90 US, and ignoring the fact that I'm unable to get the X3 here and people in the US are unable to get a Breeze there, this is more affordable. It may have fewer fans and no hinges for the side panel, but on the other hand we'll have better CPU and GPU support, and instead of Molex we have the piece of crap that we got here. So for myself, I would go for the Breeze personally. In here we have all the cooling that we want, and considering the type of budget, there is no hardware that will not fit in this thing. I also want to briefly talk about an issue that I just keep repeating whenever a Xilence product is involved. Their product presentation is by far one of the biggest issues we've got. And I'm not even referring to the specification errors or the fact that the English product page suddenly switches to German. Fan support? Vorne. Yeah, good luck for anybody who doesn't speak German. It's not like millimeters already an impossible hurdle. No, I'm talking about raw imagery. The front panel looks washed out. It looks like it looks kind of blue. The side panel, on the other hand, is pitch black. I have no idea who photoshopped the RGB effect onto the fan, but this light is blue, there's green, and the green color is kind of going around some of the blue and then going into the outer frame, and there's suddenly violet, but behind there it's blue because, physics. All in all, when I first saw the images, my initial impressions were, I will just say negative, but when it came, or I already expected, knowing how Xilence works, I expected it to be much better, and I was right. The case doesn't look like the images suggest. In the end, the colors somewhat match, tolerances of course, we have plastic versus metal going, and the fans are not breaking any laws of physics and creating a black hole. It's just a shame that the initial impression isn't in line with what the product actually looks like, in a positive manner. Because I think the case looks kinda nice. It looks budgety of course, but it's still pretty nice, unlike whatever this image portrays. But okay, this should be it for the Xilence Breeze XG131 X712.RGB Performance A X7 PC case. At this point, a huge thank you to Xilence for sending it over, and if you want to keep watching, have a look at our take on the Xilence M705D, this one. If you're looking for a budget case, you might also be looking for an excellent budget air cooler. On a side note, we now also have channel memberships, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to buy some of that cat toilet stuff, cause I need to find out if that got RGB. Anyway, thank you for watching and hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.